week one of the NFL this week, but that does not mean that MLB DFS suddenly goes in the back burner because we are still here with the solo shot. Every single weekday, we're going to have our MLB DFS Q&As going on in the afternoon. So even though the NFL is here to distract us, we still got business to take care of on the MLB side, and that includes a 6-game slate for tonight where things are a little dicey, to say the least, at pitcher. So what we're going to do for today is try to decide which pitchers we can actually trust and try not to lose all of our bankroll in the process before week one of the NFL. Welcome on into the solo shot. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com, here to break down this 6-game main slate with lock set for 6:40 tonight. Yes, that is correct. 6:40, not 7:05 for tonight. So make sure you have your lineups done in advance. Sit back, relax, watch those points pile up, and then watch the NFL game tonight as well. Scheduling note, this is not the only podcast we have on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed for today. Yes, the Heat Check NFL Podcast. Myself and Brandon Gadula is back. We're recording that at 10 a.m. Eastern Time on YouTube today. It'll go up on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed immediately after that. All of our Heat Check podcasts, whether it be NFL or PGA, I guess no NASCAR or UFC on that side, but the PGA and NFL podcasts will all be live on the FanDuel YouTube page. We've also got the solo shot there, the weekly Q&A or the daily Q&A stream. We'll have a snake draft stream with myself, JJ Zachariason, and Brandon Gadula on Friday. Waiver wire Q&A with JJ on Tuesday as well at 3:30. So just make sure you are subscribed to the FanDuel YouTube page because there's a lot of stuff popping. So make sure you are just getting notifications each time we go live so you can tune in and join in on the fun. And again, don't forget to check out the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed too for that NFL Heat Check podcast later today. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts. And if you like what you hear, leave us a rating and review as well. Again, this is a 6-game slate for tonight for MLB DFS. Pretty heavy chance of rain in New York for the Yankees and the Orioles. That's scary. Could mess up the slate because there's really only one starter I feel great about, and he happens to be in that game. So fingers crossed the rain clears out in New York for the Yankees and the Orioles. Once again, we got windy and cold conditions at Wrigley Field. It is 64 degrees there for the Cubs and the Reds. Wind is blowing in at 14 miles per hour. So once again, downgrade hitters big time in that one, unless your name is Mike Moustakas, because apparently he can hit a dinger in any condition. So downgrade the bats for the Cubs and the Reds. There's a pitcher we're interested in there. We'll talk about that in the pitching preview. But first, week one is finally upon us, and FanDuel is back in 2020 with the Sunday Million contest once again. For just a $4 entry fee, compete to win over $3 million in total prizes, including a $1 million first place prize. Plus, if you roster the player to score the first touchdown of the slate, you'll split a jackpot of $250,000. I lopped a zero off there. $250,000 with everyone else who has that player on their roster. For more details, visit FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel app today. Eligibility restrictions apply. Turning $4 into $1 million. Not a bad ROI there. Pitching preview for this Thursday main slate. Garrett Cole is the highest salary pitcher on the slate. He is that guy in that potentially dicey weather game. He's 11-2 on FanDuel. Sonny Gray is 10-1. We got Sandy Alcantara at $9,200 and Chris Paddock at $9,000. Jake Arrieta and Keegan Aiken are the others at $8,000 or higher. And I keep going back to Garrett Cole, even though he's continuing to let up hard contact. But I think I'm going to do so for tonight. Again, keep an eye on the weather. Things look pretty bad right now. But Cole, I think, is the pretty definitive number one on this slate. So I'm going to talk about him. But if you listen to this in the afternoon, make sure that game is actually still on. And if you're getting closer to lock, make sure the rain has cleared up. Cole is facing the Orioles tonight, and they just saw him last week, and they scored 5 runs. Only one of those was earned, but they did score 5 runs there. So despite that, I'm still going back to Garrett Cole once again tonight. That is mainly because Cole is giving himself lots of wiggle room due to the strikeouts he is getting. You can let up earned runs if you're getting strikeouts, and Cole is doing exactly that. Even with all the hard contact and the earned runs, Cole has not scored fewer than 24 FanDuel points in any game this year. 24 FanDuel points is not what you want out of a guy at 11-2. But it's also not necessarily going to kill you if you do really well with your stacks, which you definitely can do. That is valuable where Garrett Cole is not going to single-handedly kill a lineup for you. And if he doesn't let up runs, he can score a ton of points. Over the past 5 starts, Cole has been throwing past 5 starts, I should say, Cole's been throwing fewer four-seam fastballs, and he's still allowing hard contact. That's not going to go away. I wouldn't expect anytime soon. It's at a 47% hard hit rate in that time, but he has paired that with a 35% strikeout rate and a 3.07 skill interactive ERA. That is the best, most relevant sample skill interactive ERA on this slate by half a run. Cole has at least 7 strikeouts in all 5 of those starts. He has hit 10 strikeouts twice. So yeah, he's going to let up some runs. I think that if you've got making betting odds, the odds he lets up a solo shot tonight are probably like above 50%. Maybe, I don't know what the line actually is. Regardless, it's the odds he lets up a solo home run are pretty high. But he's not letting up a lot of base runners overall. Hopefully those are just, solo home runs as opposed to multi-homer games, and he can make up for that with the number of strikeouts he can get. I think that Cole is a top pitcher on the slate by a decent margin, and I'm going to go back to him in both cash games and tournaments as a result, again, pending what the weather says for tonight out in New York. So let's say that we don't have Garrett Cole at our disposal. What do we do then in the event that game does get postponed? I am okay going at Sonny Gray, but I do feel the need to say this is a really risky move, which is why I view Cole as being worth it despite all the hard contact. If you want to avoid risk, Sonny Gray is not for you. It could be really bad. He got some extra time in between starts, and he did need that because he got bounced around after just 2/3 of an inning last time out, and he allowed 6 earned runs. And, bad starts happen. That's not a huge concern by itself. But some of the numbers on his pitches in that start were concerning. It came with a pretty big dip in velocity. His sinker velocity was down 1.4 miles per hour. His four-seamer was down 0.9 miles per hour. And he also got a lot less movement on his pitches. Specifically, the vertical movement was down on every single pitch. And that leads to hanging things. And hanging pitches are not going to lead to good results no matter how good the weather may be for pitching in Wrigley for today. But Gray is also a good pitcher. So I think if you're multi-entering, there is still some reason to consider him here. If you are averse if you're averse to risk, Gray's not going to be for you. But even when we count that bad start, Gray has a 32% strikeout rate for the full season, which is a huge number. And the Cubs will strike out. They're at a 25% strikeout rate against righties this year. So I personally am willing to roll the dice at times, but I have a very high risk tolerance in MLB DFS because I know that every single play has risk. So I'm okay taking on a little bit increased risk because the marginal risk it's whatever. I have a very high risk tolerance. If you do not, Gray will not be for you. So this one really depends on your process, and that's fine. There are going to be process-based plays throughout the entire year. My process says I can have exposure to Sonny Gray, but I do need to be wary at the same time. Your process may be different, and I want to acknowledge that. But for me personally, Sonny Gray, someone I'll use at times in tournaments, but I'm hoping Garrett Cole is available so I can lower that exposure to Sonny Gray. This is a night where you could justify taking shots at some youngsters. We got Keegan Aiken on the slate. Adbert Alzolay is on the slate. And those guys definitely get strikeouts. They're definitely intriguing. I'm talking about 2 more pitchers to consider in things to watch as well. But Aiken is facing the Yankees for the 2nd straight start. Alzolay walks a lot of guys and hasn't gone longer than 78 pitches yet. So I kind of think that if I'm ranking the pitchers on this slate, I feel obliged to go with Chris Paddack at number 3 at $9,000 as my 3rd-ranked pitcher. Paddack is at home. He's facing the Giants, and it's not a great matchup. The Giants have a 115 WRC plus against righties. They have a 22% strikeout rate, and I don't really want to go at that all that often. But if I'm ranking the pitchers based on talent on this slate, Paddack is pretty easily number 3 on that list to me. And that matters more for me than matchup when the gap is big enough. And I think that it is here. So despite the not great matchup, I still think that Chris Paddack is a good play. And Paddack's results this year are not great. His ERA is flirting with 5. And he got off to a really slow start this year. He wasn't getting as many strikeouts. But from a peripherals perspective, things have picked up recently. For the full season, if we're going to count that slow start in as well, got a 3.83 skill interactive ERA with a 24% strikeout rate and a 5% walk rate. Those peripherals are basically what we've come to expect out of Chris Paddack since he debuted last year. This is also the first time the Giants have seen Paddack since July 29th, so they're not familiar with his stuff. And that's not a luxury we get a lot in 2020. With all this divisional play, we are seeing a lot of pitchers facing teams for the second, third, fourth time. Paddack is not getting that with the Giants because it's the first time since July 29th, and that does help matter. So, sure, you could roll the dice on one of the younger pitchers. I may myself, if Cole's game gets rained out, my choices are just kind of narrowed down. But I'd rather just take the known entity who I know can go 90 effective pitches, and that's with either Gray or Paddack. It is a shaky pitching slate, so take that into account with your game selection. Maybe you want to skew away from cash games if Cole can't go, but there are at least some other palatable options. So I am going to put Chris Paddack number 3 for tonight. We'll talk about one more pitcher, 1.5, I guess, in things to watch. Let's transition now into the stacks. Stacking is a whole heck of a lot easier than pitching for tonight. So we're very thankful for this. It starts off with the Dodgers. Early in the year, we were stacking against Madison Bumgarner because his velocity was down. Then he hit the injured list. And we just saw Mad Bum come back last week. The velocity for Bumgarner was up from where it was earlier in the year. And that's a good thing. But there was still enough concern in that start where we need to be high on the Dodgers offense once again for tonight. In that first start, back off the injured list, Bumgarner's four-seam fastball averaged 89.1 miles per hour. His cutter was at 84.6. Those, again, were up a tick from where he was before the injury. But his four-seamer was still down 2.6 miles per hour from where it was last year in that start alone, and the cutter was down 2.9 miles per hour. Temperature does play a big role in that, and that game was in San Francisco. And you'd expect lower velocity there than when he's in Arizona. But again, we're comparing that start to what he did last year when half of his starts were also in San Francisco. He also just didn't perform in that start. I don't think it's just, a velocity thing here. Maybe something else going on with Bumgarner. He allowed a couple of home runs in 4 innings. He had just a 6.9% swinging strike rate. So despite the fact the velocity was higher than it was pre-injury, I still don't think that Bumgarner is fully right now. In his 5 starts this year, he has a 6.00 skill interactive ERA with an 8.44 ERA. His strikeout rate is 15% with a 51% hard hit rate allowed. That is a dream combination for stacking, whether he's facing the Dodgers or some lesser offense. So Bumgarner needs to increase his velocity even more before I personally jump off board of stacking against him. For now, the Dodgers are at the top of our list from a stacking perspective until we get reason to stop stacking against Bumgarner. Now, the Dodgers haven't faced a lefty in a while, so it's hard to know for sure what this lineup will look like, but my hope is that Will Smith bats somewhere in the top 7, as he did last night. Smith has a 344 isolated slugging percentage for this year, which is it's disgusting. His hard hit rate is 51% with a 3.9% soft hit rate. So I don't need Will Smith at the top of the lineup. I just want him somewhere in the top 7. If we get that, we can go nuts for Will Smith for tonight. So hopefully he hits 7th once again. I will be very happy if that happens. And if he bats 6th, we're just getting happier and happier the higher he goes in the lineup. Mookie Betts, AJ Pollock, Chris Taylor, other main priorities for me here. Kike Hernandez had a home run last night against righty, so if we get him higher in the order against the lefty, we'll take that for sure as well. So the Dodgers are the number 1 stack for tonight. The second stack isn't against a pitcher with the same name value as Bumgarner. That is the Rays against Mike Kickham. Kickham is making his 3rd total appearance. He may either start or come after an opener here, so it's not quite the same resume as Bumgarner making his 3rd appearance, whereas Bumgarner is a little bit more experienced. And the first 2 outings for Kickham certainly haven't been terrible. It is 3 earned runs over 5 innings, but with that said, we should still be inclined to stack against him here. Kickham spent all of last year in AAA with the Marlins. He was a reliever for part of that, but he also made 13 starts. And in the 13 starts, the strikeout rate was 22%. It's not terrible, but it was also in his age 30 season against AAA hitters, which causes additional reason for concern. Now, Kickham's in the majors, not a big ground ball guy, so he needs to get strikeouts to get by, and it's hard to see him getting too many strikeouts. Now, the Rays will strike out, for sure, but they also draw a ton of walks, they make solid contact, and the active roster has a 118 WRC plus against lefties this year. So we're going to find out if Kickham can successfully make that transition from AAA to the majors. I am leaning more towards the Rays than Kickham in this instance, and I think they are a solid number 2 option behind the Dodgers for tonight. Looking at the Rays lineup recently, they have been having Randy Arozarena, butchered that, Randy Arozarena batting higher in the order against lefties. He's $2,800. And Arozarena is pretty fun. He had a 236 isolated slugging percentage in AAA last year. He didn't strike out that much. He can swipe some bags. So assuming that he's in there again, Arozarena will be a building block for me for tonight within this Rays stack. Manuel Margot has been batting leadoff recently, against lefties at least. He is $2,500, was really, really good in the month of August. So I would say Margot and Arozarena are the main 2 guys here. Willy Adames, Hunter Renfroe, lower in the order. That definitely helps the platoon advantage too. So there's a lot to like within this stack, and the Rays will help you get to Madison Bumgarner, but Arozarena is at the top of the list for me. For the third stack, I'm going to go with the Padres. They are not nearly as high on my list as the Dodgers and the Rays, but they are the clear number 3 for me after you get past those top 2 teams. I think the Padres could have another good output for tonight. Facing Trevor Cahill, and Cahill has a 2.65 ERA this year, and there's the potentially could piggyback this game with Drew Smyly, and I like Drew Smyly quite a bit, so that's a bit scary to think about. But it's still a situation that could be good for stacking, mainly because Cahill walks batters and does not get ground balls. In the 5 starts he has made this year, he has a 15% walk rate with a 39% ground ball rate. That means he can put batters on base. Those batters just haven't scored this year. And that's partly because he does get strikeouts. You expect a higher strand rate when pitchers get strikeouts. They can work out of jams better that way. But the strand rate for Cahill is 88%. Even if you up the expectation because of his strikeout rate, the strand rate probably should be closer to like 70, 75%. So Cahill has gotten himself into jams, and then he's worked himself out of them. That's not something you expect to continue long term. He's also dealing with a hip injury that could force him, or that did force him out of his most recent start. So not at full health. As for Smyly, if he does play, this will be his first game off the injured list, and Smyly is no stranger to hard contact and fly balls, and it's no certainty how he will perform. So this is not a stack I feel great about, and I wouldn't go here on a regular slate. So I think, again, the Dodgers and the Rays are definitely the top 2 teams for me, but with limited options for tonight, I do think this stack works out well, going with the Padres and just kind of seeing what they can do against Cahill and Smyly. What I would do to account for Smiley's presence is target batters who can hit both righties and lefties well. And that means mainly the righties. Austin Nola is $3,000. He can hit anything, it seems like, right now. So I'm willing to go with him. Trent Grisham is not great against lefties, but I'm okay using him as well to scoop up the time against Cahill and then hope he doesn't suck when Smyly comes in. So the main focus here is the righties, and then Grisham can be the main exception among the left-handed batters on this team. Let's finish up here with things to watch. Jake Arrieta bounced back in a big way his last time out, and he gets the Marlins for tonight. He had 7 strikeouts in that last game, and that's despite not really throwing his slider once again. The swinging strike rate there was 10.8%. So it was a really good start compared to where Arrieta was at earlier in the year. You can consider Arrieta as a pitcher if you think he's really turned a corner. I think I'm more inclined, though, to stack against him and see if he comes back to where he was earlier in the year. So I think that the Marlins are kind of an okay stack. Arrieta, a true swingman in this sense, where you could use him as a pitcher or stack against him. Not in the same lineup, but I'd follow which way your gut and your research lead. If you think that Arrieta's last start was an aberration, stack against him. If you think that it was legitimate, use him as a pitcher because, again, pitching options pretty dicey. So Arrieta, a swing person tonight based on what you read into from what you saw his last time out. I also don't hate the idea of Sandy Alcantara as a pitcher in that same game. He's made just 3 starts so far this year, and his velocity in those 3 starts has been amazing. So I'm more willing to believe what we've seen in a small sample out of Alcantara because it's a deviation from what he was doing in the past. In that small sample, Alcantara has a 24% strikeout rate with a 31% hard hit rate allowed. It's a very good number. So again, it's a small sample, and the matchup is tough against the Phillies, which is why he did not crack the top three. But Alcantara is a firm fourth for me among the pitchers. It's a little bit higher salary than I was expecting. I would rank Paddock higher between the two. Paddock a little bit lower salaried. So Paddock number 3, Alcantara number 4 among the pitchers for tonight. The Red Sox are facing Josh Fleming here, and he's not a big name pitcher, and this is just his 4th start in the majors, but I'm not really that inclined to stack against him. Fleming is kind of a junk balling lefty, which is weird because he's young, but he seems to get a lot of movement on his pitches, and that movement leads to a lot of ground balls. He's got a 51% ground ball rate this year with a 30% hard hit rate. In Double-A last year, which is where he spent most of the season, he had a 51% ground ball rate, so Fleming's going to let up balls in play because he doesn't get strikeouts, but he kind of feels like he could be a higher strikeout version of Brett Anderson. So I am okay waiting to stack against him until we have some more data here. So Fleming, you could consider the Red Sox, but for me personally, I'm okay being lower on them just because I'd expect a lot of ground balls for tonight. That is all the time that we have for today here on the Solo Shot, but do not forget we are back with you at 10 a.m. Eastern on the FanDuel YouTube page to record the NFL Week 1 preview podcast with myself and Brandon Gadula, getting you set for the DFS main slate on Sunday. That's on YouTube at 10 a.m. and on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed immediately after. So make sure you're subscribed in both those places and check us out for that. Also have the MLB DFS Q&A stream today at 4 p.m. It's also tomorrow at 4 p.m., but before that we have our snake draft with myself, Brandon Gadula, and JJ Zach Reason getting you set for week number 1 in the NFL. If you have questions for me before 4 p.m. today, I am on Twitter at JimSannes, JimSannes. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast. Big thank you to Calvin Theobald. Happy week 1, everyone. Calvin Theobald, I can say it, our video producer, for keeping us on the air as always. Thank you, Cal. And thank you to everyone for tuning in. Good luck with your MLB DFS lineups for tonight. And we'll talk to you once again tomorrow. This has been the Solo Shot right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.